The biggest lie a lot of church planners believe is that they have to figure this all out by themselves. You do not. Yeah, I got a call from a guy at a conference, and it was interesting because it had been 3 months. I don't know if you've ever been to a conference before. You meet a lot of people in the lobby. You might recognize somebody from social media, and there's a lot that just happens in and between conferences. You want to see certain people speak, of course, but it's the significance of conferences as a church planter and a leader is that you get those in between moments where you get to connect with people. Well, one of those guys connected. We exchanged numbers. It's the same old that you always do. But months later, I'm minding my business, going through life. You know how it goes. It's a professional courtesy to exchange numbers when you're in a conference setting. But here we are, months later. I'm driving down the road, and the guy calls me, and he says, "Yo, what are you doing? You've never called me. You never checked in. What's going on?" I was shocked because I'm like, I recognize the number, the name. I just said, "Bro, this is what you do. You exchange numbers." And he was like, "Nah, bro, I told you at the conference we were gonna be friends, and so I need you to call me, okay? So how you doing?" And then that began our relationship, okay? And that's my boy Ern. So if you see this Ern, you remember this. It was the wildest thing ever. That was the beginning of our relationship, way back in 2011, I think. So here we are, a number of years later, and we're still rocking and rolling. The biggest lie a lot of church planners believe is that they have to figure this all out by themselves. You do not. And we have a misconception in our mind about the kind of Moses model you see modeled over the years in Christian ministry. A lot of us have seen this leader who kind of stands apart from everyone else, gets a word from the Lord, and then goes and executes on that. Now, there's a part of that story that is natural to the church planting journey where you feel a calling, and we want to, in Maroon House, help you to clarify that calling. Not if you're called to church planting and all of that, but what role, what city, what community, what style of philosophy, all of those need to be clarified along the journey. But what I want to help you to know is you don't have to figure all that stuff out by yourself. You don't have to sit in an office alone and isolated trying to discern whether or not where to go. Ask your wife who's real financially, well, she's nervous about how the finances are going to go. You talk to your friends and they like you, so they want to support you, and you trying to figure all this out by yourself. One of the best gifts that God has given me is friends like Ern. And it was in that development over the course of our time together that he would say things like, "Charlie, that neighborhood you are wanting to plant in is too small for you. You need a bigger pond to swim in. You got capacity, you got gifts, you've got abilities. So, bro, we need you to branch out a little bit." My goal when I was planting the church was to plant in the neighborhood down the road here called Harlem Heights. It's where I grew up, is where my grandmother lived there, my cousins, everybody. But Harlem is really only about maybe 1,500 people. It's apartments, it's houses, it's all of that. But I'm burdened for my folks, right? I want to see them know the gospel. And we got little small churches in the community, and no hate or shade on them, but I wanted to reach my friends. But after spending time with Ern and Pastor Trev and Pastor Doug and going to the Thriving Summit way back in the day, and going up to Philly and getting around some other church planners and leaders and connecting, they were able to speak into my life in a way that I had not heard locally. Obviously, the people locally did not want me to leave, but I needed to have friends that could speak the truth in love. That's why in my book, The Planter in Gotham, I talk about you got to listen to Alfred. You got to listen to Alfred, and you got to have these levels or tiers of relationships that you keep with you at all times. The first is you need friends that are older and further ahead than you. You need those guys who have developed the patience and the long-term view of how this city, this community, just ministry works. And so the first thing I would recommend for you is you got to have some OGs in your corner. because you're passionate, you're excited, you got a lot at stake. You might be raising money, you might be trying to convince your wife and all of that. But here's the deal. If you don't have them OGs that can kind of say, hey, here are the things you need to focus on. Here is what God has done over the years. For me in Baltimore, we had Matt Stevens. And Matt Stevens was a gold mine for us because he could tell us about the nature and the city of Baltimore from the inside out. He had weathered the storms. He had earned his stripes. He had shed blood and tears and bled over this city like nobody else. And everybody in the community would be like, as I'm going around networking, trying to politic, do my thing, everybody would say, have you talked to Matt Stevens? Have you talked to Matt Stevens? When we finally got to meet Matt Stevens, it was an abrupt and aggressive meeting because all he did was just say, yo, it feels like y'all aren't really secure in whether you're wanting to be in the city, on the edge of the city, or outside the city. Come back to me when you really figured out what you want to do, because the city will chew you up and spit you out. And so figure out where you're called to be. Again, clarifying that calling. Figure out who you're called to be and where you're called to be. Then let's have a conversation. And man, I needed that sobering reminder. What has God called you to do? But then to attach myself and say, hey, Matt, show us around. And Matt took us on what I've called a spiritual tour of the city. He showed us the major milestones and the points of darkness in the city and things where there had been breakthrough all across the city so that we could see that we were a part of a lineage of ministers and leaders, men and women, brothers and sisters, ministries and partnerships and government agencies that had seen transformation. So when I got stressed out, when I got anxious, when I got overwhelmed, you know who I would pick up the phone and call from time to time? I called Matt. You know who would call me to check up on me because he hadn't heard from me in a while? Matt would call me. Why? Because he had been seasoned enough to say, hey, there's something in you, and I know you're going through it, so let me walk with you for a while. Another type of friend you need is the type of friend that'll tell you to take care of yourself. And I had one of those friends as well, several friends when we moved to Baltimore. One was Pastor Mike Crawford. And so Mike Crawford was pivotal for me when I got to Baltimore because we moved to Baltimore in December. And I'm a Florida born and raised, always lived in the sunshine, always lived within 15 minutes of the beach. My whole life, even when I lived over internationally, I was still in proximity to the ocean and all of that. Moving to Baltimore in the wintertime and not having proximity to the ocean and all of that, it disoriented me. It was like the lights were turned off. And here it was, I went to his office and he could tell something was off. He asked me how things are going. I'm telling him, but I'm like, man, I don't know. I feel like I made a mistake. You ever been in that situation where you get to the point where you just like, man, I don't know. I might have made a huge mistake. And what Mike told me was very simple. He said, Charlie, it's the wintertime and give it a few weeks. Okay, it might have been February at this time. Give it a few weeks. The lights are going to come back on. You're going to feel much better. That he would be one of those advocates that I had for many months and years who would just come along and say, hey, how are you doing? How are you taking care of yourself? I had others like Pastor Dan Hahn and Jim Hines and all these guys who would call me just to make sure that I was good and I was doing the things to care for my soul, for my family, for myself, so that I could lead others. So you need them kind of friends around you that are going to challenge you to care for yourself. Another type of friend you have. You need a friend that'll laugh and cuss with you. You need a friend that's going to just be in the trenches with you. For me, I was blessed to have Trevor roll with me as a co-founder of Epiphany Baltimore. And then as we transitioned on into Hopeville, he transitioned with us as well. Yo, you need a friend that's just, we get in the car, we roll together. We would go, after our work sessions, we would go up there to Jason's Deli and we would get salads. I introduced him to that, the salad bar, all that, get you a little sandwich and soup. We laugh, we joke, but we would laugh, we would talk. And then we would get angry. He would get angry for me. I would get angry for him. We would advocate for one another, look out for one another. So you need friends like that. And I'm not just talking about staff friends. Now, I got lucky because We had come from a family of leaders who keep it honest, keep it real. One of the values here at Maroon House is that, yo, you don't need to code switch with us. You don't need to dress it up. Just be yourself. Just be honest. So, because once we're honest, we can deal with all the mess, right? We ain't scared of no mess. We done dealt with the worst of the worst. So just be honest with us so that we can help you. All that to say, that was just the culture we had naturally. But some of you have peers around you and colleagues that you feel like you got to dress up for, and then when you go home, you let your hair down. It was the opposite with us. When you got with us, you felt like that. You felt that pressure come off to be your real and authentic self, to laugh, to cut up, to joke, to cry, to get angry, to cuss and fuss. Man, the hell that you deal with in urban church planting is unprecedented. And so you need a friend that'll be in the trenches with you. I don't care if he's on staff or not. If you can pick up the phone and call him and say, man, I just need to vent for a little bit, right? So that's what you need. You need those kinds of friends. You also need friends that have no skin in your game. And so there's no attachment, there's no connection, there's no dependence upon you. You just need people around you that, yo, they just believe in you and rock with you. That's it. And if you don't have that, it can feel like you're out here by yourself, even though you're surrounded by team leaders and co-founders and team members and volunteers and networks and denominations. You know how lonely it feels when people don't understand you or your story? A big part of why I ended up moving back to Southwest Florida, where I'm from and where I was raised and did ministry, is because here, even if I walk down the street, people know my story. They know my mama. They know me. They just know me as a human apart from the titles and the ministries and the things that I've done or I've tried to do, right? It's like the TV show Cheers. Everybody knows your name and they're always glad you came. We want to be where we can see the troubles are all the same. We want to go where everybody knows our name. And there's something to that. And we see that even when we go all the way back to the story of Moses, that God knew his name and God had a name and there was a relation that was built there. And so you need those people that don't have no skin in your game. They're not dependent on you to make it happen. They're not yes men or people pleasers, but they're not people that are just trying to crush you and hate on you either. These are just friends that are just out there that you can call and be yourself. They know your story. They know you human. They know your failings and your shortcomings. They know the time you tried to holler at old girl and it didn't work. They know all the things. And I've got those friends that they don't care nothing about me planting no churches or leading or pastoring. They just remember the time I acted a fool at a Smoothie King. You know what I'm saying? And so you need those people in your corner. My encouragement to you is find those friends. If you don't have them, go look for them. I'm going to invite you to rock with us. At Maroon House, my big thing is create community, coaching, and care for those who are leading and doing inner city and urban ministry. You ain't got to be in the worst hood in the world. You ain't got to have gotten in a shootout last week to be a part of this. I'm just saying, if you need a friend, an advocate, an ally, that's what we do. I'm trying to create community so that you realize you ain't in this by yourself, that you can stand firm in the calling that God has given you, and you can be successful in doing what God has called you to do. So if that's you, holla at me sometime. Charlie@bmaroon.com. That's my email. Hey, text me, email me, whatever, reach out. If you know somebody that know me, holla at them, ask them, is he really legit about this? Go and check my resume. I think it's pretty solid. If not, let me know that too. But man, I'm praying that you have the friends that you need, and we're going to keep creating content that I hope is directed straight at you so that you can do the things that you believe God has called you to do.